After doing the Zenith versus the Bratton Prime, people kept asking me to do this against the Soma. Even though I've used the Zenith an insane amount of time, including the event to get the Supra Vandal, which is actually pretty decent compared to its original, despite the small changes between them, I haven't used my Soma in absolute ages. Damage-wise, you can clearly tell, and for this one I will completely ignore the secondary. The secondary for the Zenith is insanely useful, but I haven't found myself using it that much recently. I've kind of favoured its normal fire mode. So we'll compare this against the Soma Prime, which has, well, let's not lie, better crit. An insanely better crit. It's 30% compared to the Zenith's 10. 3 times damage multiplier, higher fire rate, bigger magazine. And that's where things go south for the Soma. It has 10% status compared to the Zenith's 30. Its reload takes longer, and its damage, well, its highest number is a little bit higher, like the fractionally, almost unnoticeably higher than the Zenith's lowest damage number. The damage on the Soma has always been really low, which is why it was a high crit based weapon. On one hand, the Zenith has 30% status, whereas the Soma has the 30% on crit. Damage wise, the Zenith has more. It has more impact, more puncture, even though it's just by a little bit, but it does do a lot more slash. Of course, its reload is a lot quicker, but its magazine is half the size. But it also has a slower fire rate, so it's gonna work out that these two weapons are very closely matched, of course ignoring the secondary fire completely from the Zenith, which is just an added bonus, which isn't really fair, because that secondary being able to see through the walls and shoot through the walls with 100% punch through, that would just be cheating on the Zenith's behalf. So would have to say the Zenith, when it comes to status, has just got to win this one hands down. But the Soma, having that 30% crit with the 3 times crit multiplier, is going to do a lot more damage, because when that crit does kick in, the numbers are just going to be slightly higher, because it can kick it in much more often, and because it's got 3 times the multiplier instead of the Zenith's 2, it means that that 6 slash damage compared to the Zenith's 19.5 is going to even out just a little bit, because it has a higher chance of having the crit. It's going to be doing roughly the same kind of damage, which is where I've enjoyed comparing the two, because I've always liked the Soma. It's got the same kind of features the Zenith secondary has, where you can fire 1 or 2 rounds off without having to spool the weapon up completely, which was great for the original Gorgon, but that was a feature that was taken off fairly quickly. And that's just kind of made the Soma last as long as it has. So when it comes to crit and the possibility to do more damage, because of course it's a crit weapon, and that crit multiplier means the damage numbers are going to go up, the Soma kind of got to take it for the crit, which means that because the two weapons are so close, the Soma's got to be the crit based version and the Zenith's got to be the status based. They're just too close to take apart when it comes to the numbers, total damage on this thing. Easy way, of course, to test the two apart from each other would be to just shoot an enemy. Starting, of course, with the less damaging Zenith. It's, there's 1 mag. It's almost at half health. It's actually somehow still shooting his rockets at me. There's 2 mags, and he's dead. That's actually a lot of damage he took before he would go down. Still ignoring the secondary fire of it, it's not like it doesn't do a lot of damage. I have heavy caliber, serration, split chamber. I even have a riven in here that adds more damage to it. Same can kind of be said for the Soma. Luckily somebody in my clan had a Soma riven that I've borrowed for the sake of this, that's added extra damage and crit chance, taking it to 91.1% crit chance. If it had crit damage, would have been a little bit better, but again, heavy caliber, and I said heavy chamber, and serration are in here, as well as an effective-ish crit build. And we'll basically do the same thing. It was 180 rounds from the Zenith, because that was 2 magazines. This, pretty much going to be exactly the same kind of thing. I'm just going to go for simple rounds, and as you can see, sadly, that's 200 rounds, and it's still going. Okay, some of them are missing, but not exactly landing headshots every single time here. I mean, if I aimed solely for the head, should go down a lot quicker, because it is a crit-based weapon. But that's 400 rounds versus 180. But just for the sake of fairness, let's actually get some headshots on this to get the red crits going. I'm not going to aim too much. And it does go down a little bit quicker. There's one mag is pretty much taking half the health off. But it's still, that's 200 rounds. But because this thing does have a quicker fire rate, it's obviously dealing a little bit more damage, and time-wise, the workout about the same. So choosing between the two, the only real reason I prefer the Zenith to the Soma simply has to come down to, let's call it the exclusivity of the Zenith, because it's the 500-day reward. When it comes to pure damage, as long as you're aiming for the head, it also kind of works out between the two, because the Zenith, okay, it doesn't have the same crit chance as the Soma. The Soma is definitely a better crit-based weapon, but I think I just personally prefer the Zenith, which I didn't expect going into this, because I've always liked the Soma. It's always been a pretty decent weapon. With that riven in there, it makes it just as good, but if you take the rivens out of each, they're still way too close to call which one would actually be better of this. The Soma, just simply because it's available way earlier than playing for 500 days or logging in for 500 days, it's got to go to the Soma for this, because damage wise there isn't really that much between them. When you add in the fire rate and the magazine capacities, I would love to say the Zenith, but no, I think I'm going to have to go with the Soma on this, just simply because the Soma is easier to get a hold of, and 91.1% crit with that riven in there, it did make it a lot more effective, especially considering that was a level 150 heavy. So we'll leave this off here for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch yous next time.